Sa akin. Okay, here we go. It's May 25, you said. Is that correct? Missions 1. For today, this is session 1. Here we go. What have we seen? Anong nakita natin? Just to review. The need for missions we saw a month ago. The need for missions. Because we're in big trouble before God. We died spiritually dead. We die physically. Governments, we cannot govern ourselves properly. Our domain on earth is yung earth mismo, yung environment mismo ay na cursed and is groaning, waiting for redemption. We have become a member of Satan's kingdom. We saw that. And it's true, you're of your father the devil. We need to be translated from the kingdom of darkness into the kingdom of light. We're in big trouble. And actually the theocracy, rule of God, became a Satanocracy. He is the God of this world. Almost everyone, every theologian agrees. That's clear. Malinaw na naman yan sa Scripture. Satanas ang Diyos ng mundong ito in some fashion. Of course, the big problem is sin, obviously. Dahil sa ating kasalanan, nagrebel tayo laban sa Diyos as a race. And so, lahat ng mga problems in some way connected sa kasalanan natin. Either personally or just, yan ang sitwasyon natin, yan ang nature natin. We're just sinners and magulo talaga ang mundong ito. The solution we saw on page 3 was God. God mismo. And God created us for relationship. Kailangan natin ng relationship to God. And, He's the answer. So, God has always desired from the very beginning. Nakita natin ang the heart of God. Parang yung puso ng Diyos for redemption. Starting immediately in Genesis 3. Through Israel's history. We came, page 4 was the heart of God, the missionary, I should say the heart of redemption of God is seen in different ways. In the Old Testament, He did not really send out missionaries. He used Israel, kind of a different system. Israel would stay in one place, do not associate too much with the other countries. They were never encouraged to do that. They were encouraged to separate. But God would bless them so much, other nations would be attracted to Israel. If they obey, pag susunod sila sa utos ng Diyos. Diba? Pag matapat sila sa Diyos, mababless sila talaga ng Diyos, and the other nations would be attracted. And it was actually effective when they were obedient. But when they rebelled, it was, of course, not effective. Into the New Testament, where the paradigm, the system, yung sistema, iba naman, in its missions. And that's what we're talking about. God says, okay, it's going to get much bigger now. It's not just dealing with Israel now. It will become really worldwide, and you are to go. And of course, we looked at the Great Commission, and it was all about going. We saw on page, I thought was interesting, on page 7, our summary. Our Great Commission. What is our Great Commission? And meron mga iba't ibang idea. People, Christians, good Christians. And nagmamahal sila sa Panginoon, pero they will say some things about missions I think are not accurate. What is our mission? We studied, nag-aaral tayo ng Great Commission passages, all 5, and came up with some conclusions that you memorized para sa exam. Good morning. And they're all PG. The Great Commission is rated PG. It's not rated G. Yeah, it's rated G for good and great, and but PG. Okay, proclaim the gospel, purposely go, partner with God, and produce a generation. That's my summary. Anyway, there it is for you. We looked at the scope of missions. You'll be my witnesses. Kayo ay magiging mga missionero ko, mga saksi ko, from Jerusalem, all Judea, Samaria, uttermost part of the earth. And sa palagay ko, sinabi ni Jesus, ang ganito, to remind us don't stop. Huwag kayong tumigil dito sa Jerusalem or kahit sa Judea. Huwag tumigil dyan lang, hanggang dyan lang. You go on to Samaria and to the jungles of Brazil or kahit saan, or the jungles of Cambodia. All right. We looked at a brief history on page 9. And it was interesting how the gospel went out in these circles and got further and further. I pointed out in Acts 11 those interesting people from Cyrene and Cyprus. No names. Hindi natin alam ang pangalan nila. So they're not considered heroes, but they were heroes. The first Hellenistic Jews, the first Jewish people on record to purposely go, sinasadya, talaga. Pumunta sila sa mga Gentile and said, we will share the gospel with you without any direct command from God, like Peter did. Direct command. God had to drag him to, the house of the Gentiles. These people went and shared Jesus. Whoa, that created a brand new situation, the church at Antioch. And with all these Gentile believers, napakadami sila, and dumadami sila, nagmamultiply sila. They were getting bigger and bigger, but it created a problem. Lalo sa isip ng mga Jews, the Jewish Christians, taga Jerusalem. And they said, oh, but what about? What about the law of Moses? I think they were expecting, pag konti lang ang mga Jews na papasok sa Christianity, well, we can handle that, Ilan lang and magko-conform sila just because of pressure or just because of we're the majority. But now, they will follow the law of Moses. But now, sila nga ang majority. What will happen now? And so they had to deal with that controversy, which we are studying in Galatians, right? And Paul settled that controversy. Gentiles do not need the law. In any case, the gospel kept going out and out and out to the Gentiles. We took a look at the different agents for the mission. You and me, tayo nga, ang mga agents for the mission. And notice there was two kinds of missionaries. Dalawang klaseng missionero o dalawang klaseng apostle in the New Testament. They were the apostles of the Lord. Special talaga sila, limited, chosen personally by Jesus. 12 sila. But then there were the apostles of the church. Messengers of the church, agents of the church, missioners, ministers of the church, but always the word apostolos being used for them. And we observed it means exactly the same thing as the Latin-based word missionary. Apostle, missionary. The same meaning, Greek and Latin-based. Yun lang ang diferensya po. So, there we are. So that's where missionaries fit in the church. Who are we? Are we pastors, teachers, evangelists, helpers, gifts of mercy? None of those. There's no gift of missionary. It's just the ones that go, the ones that are sent. That's what it means, right? There we go. We took a look at different kinds of missionaries. This is not biblical, really. Not a biblical distinction. Dito sa page 12. M1, M2, M3. Okay? This is not biblical distinctions. This is just missiology. This is just us. Yung mga Bible teachers and theologians and missiologists studying it so we can think about this intelligently. And the M1 ministering in your own culture, Bicolano to Bicolano or something like that, all the way to the M3 missionary crossing significant cultural, geographic, linguistic, political barriers, like the Filipino to the Kazakhs. Wow, everything's different there. Now, I think that's where we stopped. I think tumigil tayo dyan noong isang buwan. Now we come on to this. This missions through the centuries. So my goal is maybe we'll be inspired by these people. Some of them talagang, wow, matapang sila para sa Panginoon. Lakas loob talaga sa gospel. First, the apostolic period. Obvious naman, the apostles were the great force in the first century in the expansion of the gospel. But then also those other apostles, yung mga messengers sent by local churches. You see those in Acts 13, that's Paul and Barnabas. We call them, like the first missionaries. I'm not sure if they were. They're the first famous. The first ones very clearly going out on some missionary venture, and the purpose was simply to share the gospel. That's it, Acts 13. But then the others, 2 Corinthians 8, Philippians 2, these are guys like Epaphroditus and Epaphras and Timothy and Silas, who were not of the apostles of the Lord, but sent out to assist or to preach. We're not sure. Minsan hindi natin alam ang role, ang tungkulin, responsibilidad ng mga apostles of the church. But they were going out to spread the gospel in some way. So that's the apostolic period. We'll go quickly past that. You read that in the book of Acts, of course. Excuse me. Post-apostolic expansion. For the next 2 centuries, basically, the 100s and the 200s, 2nd and 3rd century. Here's some quotations from this historian, Latourette, History of Christianity. Before AD 200, Christians were found not only in every province of the empire, but also outside the empire in Mesopotamia. That's over, past, Babylon and the Tigris and Euphrates River. And obviously the gospel had gone past there to India and China. And we believe Thomas went to India. And I forget now who brought the gospel to China. But it really, really went out. But in the huge Roman Empire, it was in every province. That's before AD 200. That means about 100 years, within 100 years after the death, pagkatapos ng kamatayan ni John, Apostle John. 1 century after the apostles, the gospel is in every province. That's amazing. That's pretty interesting. They don't have, of course, the electronics and the multimedia. I mean, they've got just nothing. They don't. Printing press, that's 15 centuries away or 14 centuries away. I mean, they just write things, they travel on foot, and things can be so slow. That's pretty, and the danger, the risk that they would take. I mean, we can go so many places in the world and, no problem. But I mean, it was risky, to put your name out there. Not every day, not every year was it life-threatening to mention that you're a Jesus follower. But there were waves of persecution, and depende sa lugar, sometimes local persecution. You could be over in Spain and you were okay, but then you're over in Turkey area, or it depended on the local governors and things. But I mean, it was not a safe business to be actively spreading the gospel. And that's amazing. That's a credit to early Christians. Talagang determined, talagang they fearless in their spread, in their testimony, and they're going out. I think much of it was by not professional missionaries. There were people that purposely said, I will bring the gospel there. But I think a lot of it was just people traveling, merchants, diplomats, persecuted people moving. Jewish people, Jewish Christians, Jews were persecuted. We saw that with Aquila and Priscilla, right? They were in Rome. They were Jewish Christians. They were driven out of Rome, so it's a credit, I think, to the early Christians. Credit sa kanila. But also to the power of the gospel. The grace of God, the Holy Spirit. I mean, He just began saving people and opening hearts everywhere. To this brand new message. There's no tradition behind it. These are Gentiles, they're pagans, they're not Jewish. Hindi naghihintay sila sa isang Messiah, the God Yahweh and the prophecies. Meaningless ang lahat ng mga Old Testament sa kanila, di ba? It's just a completely new idea. And yet there it was. People were responding, as we saw, in the book of Acts. How did it happen? Christianity spread mainly. Here's, again, a historian, Ruth Tucker, spread mainly through, here's the list. Interesting. Preaching of evangelists. Okay, we expect that one. That's no surprise. Gifted evangelists, they just go and risk their life sometimes, or risk a beating or a riot. The personal witness of believers, there you go, of course. Sharing with neighbors, sharing with business partners, with customers, with just sailors, whatever. That's important. We see the Filipino here, right? The overseas contract worker here, traveling all over, personal contact. Acts of kindness and charity. That was powerful, they say. We will read some comments. Acts of kindness and charity. The pagans, the Gentiles were amazed. Humahanga sila,
What specific activities?
We'll read on the next page, and we'll mention that. Very good. The faith shown in persecution and death. I don't think we mentioned that next page, so I'll say that. In the arena, they were thrown to the lions. The gladiators were killing them. They're being tortured. They're burnt alive and crucified. And the Romans and the Gentiles just observed them in death. And they knew they were going to die. I mean, their whole family, their children, their women. They were amazed. In writing, we have documents. So they were just amazed. And what their comments were, they were not afraid to die. Yung mga Romans, yung mga pagan people, they were afraid. They said, no idea. What's going to happen? Ano mangyayari sa akin pagkatapos ng kamatayan ko? Where will I go? What will happen? And these Christians were not afraid. They knew. Jesus rose from the dead. I will rise from the dead. In ancient times in Rome, it was illegal to examine a dead body. Isang bangkay. Tama ba ang Tagalog ko? Bangkay? Corpse. So the doctors, they couldn't dissect. Well, let's see. Oh, that's a heart, lungs, and examine like we do now. Medical students are just cutting open dead people all the time. And look at it. It was illegal because of superstition. I mean, these people are dead. Where are their spirits? Are there evil spirits involved? And they just said, no touchy. We don't touch a dead body. As soon as he dies, diretso sa grave or sa tambakan, or depende sa tao. Depende sa namatay. So you know what they did? They would examine people kahit buhay pa sila. They're still alive. And they want to see what's going on dito sa loob na katawan. So, which is horrific. That's like a horror movie from Japan or the Philippines or America or somewhere. Like, oh my goodness, we're just going to cut you open here. I want to see what your muscles look like or what's happening. And oh my goodness. So, where do you get your specimens? Saan makakuha? I mean, if you're a doctor, you're a scientist, saan makakuha yung mga specimens? Today, you go to the morgue. I know a guy, Alex Marcos. He's at CCF now, and he completed his training as a doctor. And he told about when they got money together, him and his buddies, and they went to the morgue and they bought binili nila ang body. It was all legal. I donated for science, and not then. So where did you get it? Get them at the sa labasan ng arena. Get them at the exit of the arena, or somewhere in the arena. People, I mean, how often do you meet someone who's dying? Only, Lolo or Lola. Well, you don't examine them, But these criminals, being killed every festival in the arena. Oh, marami na mga specimens. And so they were able, and also the gladiators, yung mga pagan, yung gladiators and the criminals fighting doon sa arena. And so he's dying. He's no hope. Walang pag-asa. He's dead. Pero buhay pa. So they confronted many Christians and talked with them. And the doctors were amazed. They're completely different. The Christians, iba talaga sila sa final moments, in their suffering, in their dying. Iba talaga sa mga iba. Interesting. And the intellectual reasoning, another force, the intellectual reasoning of the early apologists, Irenaeus and Polycarp and other men such as these, who were defending Christianity intellectually. That had an impact as well. Next page. Here's some quotations. Dionysius of Alexandria describes Christian love during an epidemic. And to answer your question, Mon, ito ang sagot. I think this is very common. Ito ang pinaka-powerful siguro, pero maybe, siguro even day to day in the marketplace, sa kapitbahayan nila, kahit sa neighborhood nila. But this was amazing. Most of the Christians in our city, quotation ito, in AD 260, most of the Christians in our city showed unbounded love and loyalty, never sparing themselves. He was talking about a time of epidemic. Terrified talaga yung mga gentil, mga pagans, so they're all Gentiles, mga pagans, terrified, because everyone's dying. I mean, that's terrifying. It's epidemic. As soon as you feel, I feel sick, you know, siguro, 80% chance you are going to die this week. Because there's no cure, there's no hospital, there's nothing. People are terrified, and so they ran from the cities. They knew there was something about contagious. They knew if you're with the sick, you get sick. They don't know the details. Hindi nila alam ang mga detalye. How does that happen, An evil spirit or evil humors or evil gas jumps or something. Germs and microbes, and hindi nila alam, pero they would run. Naiwan nila ang mga minamahal nila. They'd leave their loved ones behind. Never sparing, but the believers never sparing themselves and thinking only of others, heedless of danger. They took charge of the sick, attending their every need, helping and comforting them. And most of them, siguro terminal. Siguro 90%, they're going to die anyway. Mamamatay sila. But we will stay with you. We will stay with you. And with them departed this life serenely happy. With them departed. They died. The Christians stayed behind and died with them. They got the same bubonic plague or cholera or whatever it was. It was really a suicide mission. Almost a suicide mission. There was a group in northern Africa, Alexandria. I forgot what they called themselves. I read about them. The shepherds of love or something. The shepherds of sacrifice. And that was their mission. It was like joining, the Navy SEALs suicide squad or something. Amazing love. They were infected by others with the disease, drawing on themselves the sickness of their neighbors and cheerfully accepting their pain. They had never seen any love na ganito. Never seen it. That has an impact. What is in your mind? What is motivating you? And siyempre, they shared Julian the Apostate. Who's Julian the Apostate? Remember Constantine, Emperor Constantine, 313, he says, Christianity is legal. Then he said, Christianity ang state religion. Then he dies, and the next emperor is Julian. He's called the apostate because ayaw niyang sundin ang Christian religion. And he actually wanted to restore belief in the gods. Naniniwala siya sa mga pagan gods. And so he wanted like revival in paganism. So he's called Julian the Apostate, Emperor of Rome. And he writes to the pagan priests. These impious Galileans, ibig sabihin Christians, not only feed their own, but ours also. Siyempre, they feed each other, but they feed us, the other pagans, welcoming them with their agape, their love. By the way, agape was almost completely a Christian word. When Paul uses agape, it's almost completely an unknown concept. It was almost invented by Christians, the idea of agape. It's fascinating. They attract them as children are attracted with cakes, with candy, you know. That's yun ang picture, yun ang kanyang picture ng mga Christians. They're like, here, come on, you want some candy? Candy, come on, follow me. And what's the candy? It's this love. It's this unconditional love. Well, the pagan priests neglect the poor. Our own pagan priests never help the poor, even our own poor. And by a display of, the hated Galileans, Christians, devote themselves to works of charity. And by a display of false compassion, he's saying, hindi totoo yan, pero okay. Obvious, was true compassion, tunay na compassion yan, di ba? They have established and given effect to their pernicious errors, yung pangit na mali. You know? Such practice is common among them and causes contempt for our gods. Why do we not observe that it is their benevolence to strangers, their care for the graves of the dead, interesting, flowers and take care of the family, and maybe not their family, kahit yung mga non-relatives, even the pagans, and the pretended holiness of their lives. Napansin niya ang mga kabanalan nila, mga purity ng pamumuhay nila, that have done most to increase atheism. That's interesting. This has done, yung patoto ng mga Christians has done the most to increase atheism. But what he means is unbelief in the pagan gods. He called that atheism. Hindi na naniniwala ang mga citizens natin sa mga gods, you know. So he called that atheism. For it is disgraceful that when no Jew ever has to beg. The Jews were persecuted. And he's saying, there's no more Jewish beggars. There's no more Jewish beggars. What's the problem? Sana marami ang mga Jewish beggars. Kasi ayaw niya ang mga Jews. Bakit wala ng Jewish beggars? Because the Christians are helping their Jewish friends. Because Jesus was Jewish. And the impious Galileans support not only their own, but ours as well. All men see that our people lack aid from us. It's obvious. We pagans do not even help each other. Teach those of the Hellenic faith, Greek paganism, to contribute to public service. So, come on, you priests, you need to inspire the pagans to be more generous. Like the Christians. Hopeless, walang pag-asa dyan siguro. So perhaps love conquered Rome more than preaching. What a lesson for us today. Actually, I'm sure it's both. They were preaching, they were sharing, they were fearless, but the love was powerful. It was so powerful. I think I'm just going to give a medyo political statement na ito about America. You can take it if gamitin nyo ito dito sa Philippines. I believe the American church made a mistake. We made an error, some errors. I don't know when we started, when I should say. Was it maybe starting in the 1960s, maybe? I don't know. When meron moral revolution sa America, right, with the hippies and the free love and, sexual immorality and the movement of the gay movement and just other ideas that were, not conservative, not Christian. And we began to fight politically. And I think they were honest and good men. They were trying to do the right thing. And maybe they were right. I'm not God. I can't judge. But it seemed like in America, that with the church fighting politically against the sin, but it meant we were fighting politically against the sinners. We're fighting against our neighbors. We're fighting against these sinners. And it didn't work, to be honest. We lost. We lost the war. The cultural war, America, political war, moral war, we lost. And so today, in fact, I think parang it backfired. It came back and it hurt the cause. It hurt our cause. And I think the Christian church sometimes is still doing that. We're still fighting and fighting and fighting the sinners. We're fighting them. And it's not working. Instead of loving them. Now I know we say, no, we still love them. We still love them. But they don't see it. I think if you took 20 homosexuals in America, randomly chosen, and said, what does the evangelical church think about you? Do they hate you? Do they love you? Do they respect you? Do they respectfully disagree? Where is it? It would not be good. I think 16 out of 20 maybe would say, oh, they hate us. They hate us. They're against us. They want to persecute us. The sinners in Jesus' day, if you ask them, prostitutes, criminals, liars, thieves, sexually perverted, I don't know, the sinners. And we know the worst ones. If you ask them, what does Jesus think about you? How does Jesus feel about you? Malina na. He loves us. He's very merciful. He gives us hope. We like Him. We like Him. But we follow Him. We follow Him. We can't listen to Him enough. We push our way into meetings. We endure humiliation like that, the woman, the sinful woman, that everybody, so embarrassing and humiliating because everybody knows she's a prostitute. And she comes in among all these self-righteous people. Why? Just to be near Jesus. Jesus was super popular with sinners. Somewhere my disconnect, somewhere we're doing something wrong, in my opinion. Now, the Philippines might be fighting similar battles against sinful people. And it's not an easy question, but maybe a lesson from history. I just hold that out to you. There you go. 3b, here we go. So that was an exciting 2 centuries. And at the end, spiritually, parang na-conquered na ang Roman Empire by these poor people. Most of them poor. Very few powerful people. Next era. Constantine to the medieval era. Medieval, the word medieval means between, I think, between the ages or between, I got to refresh, or between the Enlightenment. And we call them the Dark Ages. It's like during the times of the Greeks and the Romans and Greek philosophy, Aristotle and Socrates and Plato, there was education and thinking was powerful, was respected. And then there was what is called the Enlightenment in Europe, up beginning, I think it's 14th century or 13th century, but in any case, between there, it was between the Enlightenments, and it was kind of dark. Not a lot of great scholarship, not a lot of freedom, not much thinking, not much exchange of idea. It was kind of ugly. Just a lot of war, a lot of pain, a lot of power, a lot of corruption, and we call it the Dark Ages. But before that, there's this period here of about 200 years, right? When Christianity is now legal and becomes powerful. It becomes powerful, centered lalos a Rome. Lots of power in Roman Christianity. Well, here are two heroes in that time. Ulfilas, I just was reading about him last night. These are really interesting people, all these names. They're not like Baptist missionaries today. Times were different, they were different. The church was centered, Rome was very powerful, a lot of politics going on, even with these people, some of them. He was a Greek, probably taken captive by, or his parents were taken captive, we're not sure, and he was captive under the Goths, which is where Romania is today. So things Gothic, it's from that part of the world. He was converted in Constantinople, serving as a diplomat. 10 years later, bumalik siya sa Goth to Romania, what we call Romania, as a bishop. He did 40 years of evangelism, and established lots of believers and churches there, and credited with translating the Bible into Gothic, which he may have had help with that. They disagree, the scholars, about that, which meant that they had to invent an alphabet. I don't think they were writing it. He had to invent that first, so it's a huge task. Held a mild form of Arianism, which was Jesus is not one with the Father, and Jesus is not God completely. Not believing in the Trinity. But he did preach the gospel. Jesus was divine, Jesus was God, he was deity. That's why he says mild form of Arianism. And he died on the cross and rose again, and he's the way. So he was during that time period. Then Patrick, the Catholic Church, Lalos America, and in Ireland, Saint Patrick is a hero. Does he belong to the Catholic Church? Does he belong to the evangelical church? Well, it's in these days, during these 2 centuries, it's mahirap sabihin, Was he like from Rome, under Roman authority, Roman Catholic authority? Is he under the Pope? It was like a time when Rome was becoming more and more powerful. Yeah. But in the transition. Well, here's Patrick. Missionary to Ireland. He was Celtic, the ethnic group in the island of Britain, Great Britain, and he was taken captive to Ireland as a slave. He got converted, escaped, and received training back in Britain, I believe. AD 432, he goes back to Ireland, stayed there for 30 years. So Patrick, he's Irish. He's not actually Irish. He was Celtic. But that's where he served in Ireland, started 200 churches, 100,000 converts. Wow. And Ireland became a very powerful force in the gospel going out. Ireland was, and even in education, higher education, some great thinkers. Ireland was in a very important center for the gospel. So there's those 200, at least 2 heroes there. Medieval missionary expansion. Now this is a long period, obviously, 500 to 1200. This is in Dark Ages, dominated by Rome. So this is where it gets, yes, they were bringing the gospel to pagans, and it was, the death and burial and resurrection of Jesus, and he is God and the Trinity, and you need to have faith in Jesus, but probably mixed in with sacramentalism. So, but I think people were coming to Christ from their pagan religions, and they were believing in this Jesus. We'll say a word later about the quality of the conversions that were made in some of these places. But in any case, the news about Jesus is going out into all the world. The Nestorian church, missionary-minded church, independent of Rome. These guys were independent of Rome. There you go. They brought Christianity eastward toward India and China. China in AD 635 and southern India And the Nestorian church still exists today. I want to do some more reading on the Nestorian church. That should be fascinating. But that went out. Columban, an Irishman. See what I mean? Ireland became important. Irishman, Christian, obviously, who started a missionary center on the island of Iona in the 6th century. Like a Bible school, like a Bible college, Bible Institute, missionary training center. It's not a new idea. It's a very, very, very good old idea. From there, Scotland was evangelized. So their focus from Iona was Scotland. And for 2 centuries, Britain and the continent were evangelized largely from the missionaries going out from the school that Columban started. Willibrord. It says 6th century. It really should be 7th century. 7th century. He joined the Benedictines. So we're already talking about, you've heard of Benedictine monks, connected to Rome. So already, have that strong connection to Rome. But he goes out and he studied in Ireland. And then went to the Frisians. Who were they? Northwest Germany, the Netherlands. So he went north into the cold country up there, and he brought the gospel in that direction. A lot of politics involved. And some of the politics with these preachers, it's the battles between the kings, the Frankish kings, the French kings, and the German kings, and the warlords, and Rome. And the Pope, and Italy, and Italian kings even. All of this. Sometimes it was just survival. It was survival. The church was not independent. The church was already politically involved and protected. Protected from the pagans, protected from other Christians. I don't know. It was sometimes pretty ugly. I think some of these men, there wasn't much choice. They needed to be protected, so that meron mga alliances with popes and with kings and armies to just protect them and their people, their disciples. The next one, Boniface, big hero to this day in Germany. He was from England, actually, born in the country of England. He was a young colleague of Willibrord. Okay. Not much younger, just you can see his dates. No, you can't see his dates. Just maybe 20 years younger. Became a colleague, reaching out to the Frisians, the northern part of Germany. So he spent most of his 40 years evangelizing the pagans of Germany. Ansgar was Frankish. That would be French. Frank equals French in a sense. So he was from what we call France today. Charlemagne, great Frankish king, the great French king and conqueror who embraced Christianity and supported it. In any case, Ansgar was Frankish. He grew up in an abbey, which means like growing up in a monastery. So he grew up, very strict, very well trained. He went to Sweden, even further north, and trained missionaries to reach Denmark. So the gospel is going out. Again, connected probably with some things we would not be comfortable with, and loyalty to the Rome and the Pope, and maybe not believing in some things like priesthood of all believers, sacramentalism, baptizing babies, probably not the same as our evangelical churches. But in any case, it's the gospel and Jesus, Bible is going to pagans. Next page, page 14, Cyril and Methodius, 2 brothers. Interesting guys. They were Byzantine Christians. Byzantine means Eastern. By this time, there's like a division. Dalawang power center ng Christianity. Rome, of course, familiar tayo sa Rome, but then also in Constantinople, over in Turkey, what we call Turkey today, was the Eastern Church. And, from there, the churches that are often called the Orthodox churches, the Russian Orthodox and the Greek Orthodox, the Eastern Orthodox, and all of those. They're very powerful, And they're big. You know, we're very familiar in Philippines and America with the Latin-based churches, the Rome churches. It was a whole nother half of Christianity. These guys are Byzantine Christians. There was communication, people being loyal to Rome, loyal to Constantinople. They became missionaries. And it says here in your notes, they reached the Slavic people. You've heard of the Slavic people over there, like Czechoslovakia. Today, Czech Republic. They went there. Apostles to the Slavs. They were born in Thessalonica, by the way, where Paul wrote his letter to. Not sure of their ethnic background. It's just where they were born. But in any case, they went and reached lots of Slavic people in Moravia, what we call Czech Republic. Eventually, the Moravian Christians were forced to flee. They were persecuted. Why were they persecuted? This probably part of it was Cyril and Methodius, to their credit. This was good. Maganda ito, maganda ang idea nila. They were not satisfied with the Latin liturgy. And you know the tradition of Rome. Until recently, it's the Mass is said in Latin, and the liturgy, and the songs, and the reading, and which is, to us, evangelical Christians, seems very unfortunate and crazy. And why would you do such a thing? We want people to understand, right? Well, these guys were pioneers, and they put the liturgy in Slavic, and they were persecuted because of that. I mean, they were brought to Rome and accused, and there was charges of heresy and all of this. That got them in big trouble, but it probably also was very effective. They would go to the Slavic people, speak their own language. We worship God in Slavic. Amen. By the year 1200, Europe was Christianized. My quotation mark dyan. The conversions were through direct missionary effort. Yes, like these men, but also through the conversion of kings. You convert the king, and maybe you convert the whole country. Technically, officially, we are no longer, we're now Christians. We don't follow the pagan gods. You know how that happens, of course. Authority-based societies with kings. And walang freedom of religion. What? Ano ba yan? Freedom of religion. Walang ganon. So sometimes the conversion of kings was not truly spiritual. They want the support of the Pope. They want the support of another king who now has a Christian empire, a Christian kingdom. All of this, it's a big game. It's a big power struggle. Siguro minsan, totoo talaga, genuine nga ang conversion ng kings. Depende. However, this introduced a carnal element into the conversion process, obviously. Converted for political reasons. So there's walang nangyayari dito sa puso. And of course, his subjects, his citizens, same with them also, hindi genuine ang conversion nila. But, this did open up Europe to spiritual evangelism by smaller groups of true evangelical Christians. That's a good point. Maybe in some cases, pre-evangelism lang ito. All of these, some of the results of these men going out and converting whole tribes and nations. Genuine ba ang conversions? Siguro mixed. But it was still good news. It was still good. In come smaller evangelical, what we would call evangelical groups, naniniwala sila sa, gospel as we know it, and the Bible, and live by the Bible, and not by all these crazy traditions of the church. So that's good. Let's stop there. I think we've been at this for almost an hour.